So as we continue with today, I want you to think about which type of person are you when it comes to storms. There's usually one of these in every family. Are you the person who preps for the worst? Like you're the planner, type A, you like the second you hear bad news, you are ready to fix anything, do anything, or are you the other person that kind of is the person who wings it and just hopes for the best, doesn't plan to prepare, kind of procrastinates, and just kind of hope you figure it out on your way? Anybody can identify with any of those kind of personalities. My wife and I, we got to see these planned out just in the last few weeks. As we got to see everything unfold before us, our personalities started to shine. Now, my wife, she is the planner prepper. The second she heard we were going to get some bad news, she was on it. She was buying everything. I think she probably has some kind of like hidden trench somewhere with like food for like years, and she plans and preps for everything in life. She's so good at this. That's just how God made her. Now me, I am the opposite of that. I am we'll see what happens is my classic phrase. And usually that gets me in trouble a lot because I'm just like, yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it. And not that I want to procrastinate, but I don't want to have to spend the money, waste my time and energy if what they're saying or what's going to happen really doesn't come to fruition. Now, how that played out in our week was pretty funny because my wife, she spent the week going to the grocery store, getting tons of groceries. She got the gas cans. She got everything we needed to survive Snowmageddon. Now, for me, she gave me a separate list, which she should have never given me. One, I had such a crazy busy week. We were serving and helping so many families here at the church that my week was so limited on time. But I had one day, which was Friday. This is the day before the storm hit. So I had one day to get all the things on my list. And I quickly that morning realized all of the things on my list are now gone. So what do you do in those moments? I called my dad and I said, Dad, listen, I need your help. And quickly, he ran to my rescue. He was awesome, helped me get a generator. I got some propane for our grills, all the things that were on my list. He could tell I was in misery. And not only I was in misery, but my wife, who was the planner, quickly turned to panic when she realized we didn't have all the items that were on her list. Now, the thing is that didn't actually go according to plan, which it never does it? All of our plans, usually we can throw them in the trash in these moments. And for us, we didn't plan. Our dogs were actually getting fixed this week. So they're miserable sitting around the house. They got the cone of shames on. And then one of our kids ends up getting the flu. There's no doctors open. So he's at home sick, miserable. I then forgot to move my wife's minivan up to the front of the driveway instead of on the hill. So when I try to get it out, I let it defrost for a little bit. I lock her keys in her car. And so now it's just running for hours on end. Finally got somebody to show up, help me get it unlocked, get it up out of the driveway. Just to literally say this week has been chaos for us and probably you as well. All of your plans, everything that you had in store are now changed, and you just have to take what's been given to you. Whether you are a planner or you're a wing it and see what happens kind of person. In light of all that, we've all been going through so much, trying to get through these storms. And I want to talk about today not only the literal storms that we face in our forecast, but also in life, these things happen, don't they? We face life storms that we didn't see coming, things that we didn't imagine ourselves ever going through, hard times, unimaginable things. What do we do when these things come? How do we prepare for them? But not only that, how do we even get through them? And also, what does the Bible have to say about the storms that we face, the challenges that we go through in our lives when they come? And so over the next few minutes, that's the question I want us to address is this: what do you do when you face storms in life? What do you do when you have a storm that you're facing in your life? And so as we unpack that today, before we dive in, let me just say welcome to today's service. I know that this is not what any of us wanted today, but I'm so glad that we are still able to gather and be together. For those of you who don't know me or if this is your first time with us, my name is Trey, and I just want to say thank you for being a part of today's service. Even though we're not able to meet in the building, it is great that we still get to be together. And if this is your first time with us, thanks for tuning in and joining this service. I know you could be watching anywhere, but you chose our church today. And so thank you for entrusting us with your church experience. And I hope today that you get something that will help you in your life and in your faith, and maybe even help you with what's going on in your life that you're facing right now. Now, let's go back to the storms for a minute. The truth is, the Bible has a lot to say when it comes to things that we'll face, challenges that we go through, and storms that we will encounter in this life. Right now, even in my Bible reading plan for the year, I'm in the book of Job. And you talk about somebody that experiences some crazy life storms, it's this guy. And all throughout the biblical narrative, we see so many different people, time and time again, from multiple generations, go through struggles, go through hardships, go through heartbreak, go through all of these things that they didn't see coming. And the Bible gives us such great clarity to how they managed those storms when they come, but also how they ended up leaning on God in midst of life's toughest circumstances. And even Jesus himself doesn't just tell us that those things were for back then. He even then tells us that even today, you and I are going to face things that we didn't see coming. This is a promise from Scripture that we actually reference here a lot because I think it's one of those things that we all need to understand when it comes to what we go through in this life. It's found in John 16:33. Jesus says this, "I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace, but in this world you will have trouble." And nobody likes that, do they? But then it says this, Jesus says, "But take heart, for I have overcome the world." And so what does that mean for you and I in light of all the storms that maybe we'll face or that we're currently facing? I think this is kind of what Jesus is trying to get across to us in our generation today, is that it's not if we're going to face storms in our lives. It's a matter of when we face storms, how will we go through them? It's not a matter of if we're going to face storms. It's a matter of when we actually have these storms come into our lives, how will we go through them? So let's talk for a while about how do we face these life storms and how does the Bible help us get through these things, from loss to addiction to trauma to heartbreak to brokenness to depression to bad and overtaking thoughts to things that we had no idea that we would ever experience on this earth. See, my family and I, during this crazy storm, we had a lot of movie nights. And one of them, we watched this movie called King of Kings. If you haven't seen this movie, I highly recommend it. It's an animated film about the life and story of Jesus. And it's a great watch. My kids loved it. But what I noticed was there was one particular scene where these close followers of Jesus, known as his disciples, faced a storm. And not only that, they got to see Jesus do something miraculous in the storm. Now for me, I don't know why, in my brain, I always picture this really cool moment with the Son of God doing this miraculous event, and the water's calm, and the sun is out, and everything's great. But this movie depicted this story very differently than my mind had imagined this to be. And then I went back to the scriptures and read the story, and I was like, wow, this is completely different than I remember reading. And so I want us to read this storm that this particular group went through, and I want you just to see and imagine what it would have been like for them going through this storm. And then I want you to think about, in light of what happens to them in the midst of the storm, how Jesus can be there for you in the midst of whatever storm you may be facing today as well. So if you have a Bible, we're going to open up to the New Testament book of Matthew. We're going to look at chapter 14, and we're going to read a pretty big section here, 22 to 33. So Matthew 14, 22 through 33. And here's what it says about the particular storm that they faced. It says, immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost." But Jesus spoke to them at once and said, "Do not be afraid," he said. "Take courage, I am here." Then one of his disciples, Peter, called out to him and says, "Lord, if that's really you, tell me to come to you, walking on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over to the other side of the boat, and then he walked on the water towards Jesus. When he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. He says, "Save me, Lord." And Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" When they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. And then the disciples worshiped him, saying, "You really are the Son of God," they exclaimed. Now, there's a lot going on in this story. This particular storm comes out of nowhere. The disciples are panicking, freaking out, trying to figure out how they're going to get through this. And then all of a sudden, here's this guy, Jesus, they've been following, and he's literally walking on the water in the midst of this storm. And he teaches them some things in the midst of this, gives them some life lessons to follow. And I think that it would help carry them through other storms that they would face, even when Jesus was no longer with them. And so today, what is it that we can learn from this story, this storm in the Bible, to one, learn more about their storm that they face, but two, for us, in the storms that we face in life as well. And so here are a few thoughts I want to give you today. What do we do when we face life storms? And one of the things I didn't really pay attention to as much when I first knew about the story, but really stood out to me as I thought about it today, is that don't hide your emotions in the storm. Be honest about them. I think a lot of us, our tendency is to hide our emotions, to kind of, forget them or pray them away, hope that they don't stay, and never really address how we're really feeling or what we're really going through. And I think a lot of times we try to cover that up with, false pride or even, spirituality or I got this, a sense of control. But sometimes it's just good for us to be honest about how we're feeling. And we see this throughout so many scriptures in the Bible, people who are just honest, raw, and real before God. And sometimes you're like, can they really tell God that? Like, can they really be that real with him? And what I love about that, story after story reminds us that God isn't scared of our emotions or how we feel, and it's okay to be honest about how we're feeling or what we're going through. He created those feelings, and sometimes if we keep compounding them over and over, it just makes matters worse. And for a lot of us, that's what we do, right? We bottle up our feelings, and then eventually what happens is we keep bottling these things up. Eventually they erupt and they explode, and they cause us to do things that we never wanted to do or feel things or experience things that we were never meant to experience. And so today, I think one of the things that we can look back at this passage and realize is that they were honest about what they were going through. And anybody will tell you, if you go through any kind of trauma or grief, is to fully let your body and emotions and everything experience the grieving process. Don't skip out on any of the steps, because it's important to go through those things when we go through storms in life and things get confusing and odd and we don't know what to do or where to turn. It's important to go through that process of allowing ourselves to grieve, to be angry, to be sad. But the point is to not stay there, to go through the process and allow God to work in and through our lives in the midst of those places. And it's also important for us to find good places to deal with those emotions. I think a lot of us are really good at finding places that we shouldn't go to during those times. Some of those things like posting it immediately for the world to see, instead of allowing yourself to personally understand and feel what you're feeling and go through, instead of being so harsh and rash with our words to a world that immediately takes them and clings to them. Or maybe for some of us, it's not going to the right people. We go to the people that tell us what we want to hear instead of what we need to hear. And a lot of times that can be just as damaging, because we're just looking for affirmation for the bad decisions or things that we're doing that we know that are not what we should be experiencing. Or maybe for us, it's like I said before, we harbor them in to a point where we don't fully deal with them in an appropriate way. Let's go back to the passage. It says this. The disciples, it says, they were terrified, and in their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost." So they were freaking out. They didn't know what was happening. They couldn't see kind of what was happening. And then all of a sudden, Jesus responds by saying this. He says, "Don't be afraid. Take courage. I am here." And what's so cool about this response, I didn't think about this until this week, is the idea that we wouldn't get to read these words, this encouragement from Jesus to them and to us, if the disciples wouldn't have taken a moment just to be real about what they were feeling. Because this is where we get to hear Jesus respond to them. And to get to hear these famous words, take courage, I'm here, don't be afraid. They received clarity and encouragement in their time of need. And many of us, that's what we need as well. And that's why those places can be hard when we face storms to immediately want to just, take our emotions all over the place, but to appropriately deal with them is important when we face all kinds of storms. And Jeff was talking about earlier our small groups. This is a great place for all of us to be able to gather together and to have just great people to be able to share with, to encourage each other with, to be there for one another, to have a safe place to share all the things that are going on in our lives so you can be there for other people and other people can be there for you. Or maybe for you, you have a best friend or somebody that you know and you can trust during those storms. Don't keep those things to yourself. Share what's going on and allow God into those spaces when you face those storms. The second thing I see in this storm is this. This one is kind of a little bit more obvious in the text. It says to not lose our focus in the storm, but to keep our eyes on Jesus. This is what we see Peter do when he begins to sink. He cries out because he had lost his focus. He had focused so much on the storm that he had lost focus on the Jesus that called him to experience the miracle that he was walking in. And storms can cause us to lose our focus. We can lose sight of God and we begin to sink. We see all these other things begin around us that are unhealthy for our lives. We can sink into self-pity. We can sink into blame. We can sink into pride. We can sink into addiction or dark places that we were never created to be in or to live in. And that's why it's important, no matter how hard things get, no matter how bad the storms seem in our lives, to remember to keep our eyes and our focus and our attention on God. Going back to the first verse that we read, remember Jesus said this, trouble will come, but to take heart, because he has overcome the world. This is who's on your side when you face troubles of all kinds. And I saw this post that really troubled me the other week. Somebody was saying that many of these Christians that were seeing this need in the world, and they were posting about how much they just wanted to start praying for all the things. And I remember just seeing this post and somebody comment saying, hey, you Christians, stop praying. That's such a passive way to, negate all the things that are really happening. But I began to think about that. I'm like, listen, prayer isn't passive. Prayer is the most powerful resource that you and I have ever been given. Prayer allows us to connect with God and to go on behalf of other people with God. And I've been a follower of Christ for a while now, and I've seen prayer over and over again help me in the midst of my storms, but also go before God for other people in their storms. Prayer is one of those powerful things that God has given us here on this earth to utilize, to have connection with him, and to help other people around us, and to help us no matter what storms that we may face. Listen to this. I love the Bible's encouragement. It talks about this connection that we can have with God. 1 John 5:14 reminds us that this is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And so the creator of the universe hears you when you pray. And so whatever storm you're going through, it's important to go to other people to share your emotions, but also to realize you have a heavenly Father who is always there for you. Here's another encouraging passage from the Old Testament in the book of Psalm 34, 17 through 18. It says, the righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all of their trouble. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and he saves those who are crushed in spirit. It reminds me of the famous C.S. Lewis quote that says this, pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our consciousness, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. And so for you and I, let's not forget to put our focus on Jesus, even when we don't know what the outcome is going to be. Even when things get hard and we don't know how to deal with them, I think a lot of times what we do in those moments is we try to pull away from God, when really those moments, those are the times that we need to draw near to God the most. And I hope today, no matter what storm you're facing, that you realize that you can go to God about anything, that he's there for you, that he loves you, that he hears you, and no matter how bad things seem to get, that he's going to help you get through no matter what you're going through. This is the thing that we see over and over again throughout the scriptures. And we also see it's what happened when Peter began to sink. He said, "Lord, save me." And I love the passage tells us that he reached out his hand and he grabbed him. And that's what prayer does for you and I. We bring our cries to God and he reaches out his hand and he's there for us every step of the way. It's our connection to the divine to realize that he's always there with us. And then lastly, one other thing to not forget when we're in the midst of life storms is this. Don't forget that you're never alone in the storm. Don't forget that you're never alone in the storm. See, we can all be a resource to help each other. And I think sometimes it takes bad things happening to realize that. I know for me this week, I haven't had a chance, my wife and I, we just moved into our house this past year and haven't got a chance to meet most of our neighbors. But it's crazy. This past week, I think I got to meet every one of our neighbors that are around our house because we're all out there getting everything ready. We're talking about all the things we have going on. We're trying to fix everything and do everything. And we're laughing about all the struggles that we're having and how bad the ice is. And my neighbor next to me, he literally is trying to get his generator going and then he blows it up. And I was like, wow, that's a first. I've never seen a generator blow up. And so he's running out there with a fire extinguisher. Smoke is everywhere. And it was a moment for us. And I wish I would have had my phone to record it. But it was great. I got to meet him and we got to share that struggle together. And it's something about hard times that sometimes bring us closer together than the good times do. It's those moments that we realize that we're more connected than we thought. It's those moments that we share hardships and that we watch what happens when we can be there for one another. I think one thing I forgot about in this story as Peter is walking on the water and then he sinks is to realize that he still had this boat of disciples, of people that were for him. Now, I don't know what they were doing on the boat. They may have been calling him crazy for even walking out there, but I imagine them like cheering him on. I imagine them encouraging him. I don't know what they were doing in that moment. But I had to be a reminder for him to get back in the boat when they started worshiping Jesus and to remember, wow, we're all going through this together. And I would hope and think the same thing could be true for us today as well. So many times in life, I think we just think whatever storm we're going through it by ourselves. But I love this passage in the New Testament. Paul's talking to this church in 1 Thessalonians 5. He says this, "So encourage each other and build each other up, just as you are already doing." And I will say one thing that's hard about our day and culture now, it's so sad to see so many people just not being there to help others. They're discouraging other people, commenting hateful and hurtful things, not being the people of God that they are created to be. And the point isn't that we all agree on everything, because at the end of the day, we're not. We're all different, but listen, those things shouldn't divide us or separate us as much as they are. We need to realize that together we can accomplish and do more than we ever could by ourselves. And when we go through things, man, it's so much better to go through them knowing people are right there with us and have our backs, that we're never alone. And sometimes I think we can also fall into the trap that no one understands what I'm going through. My storm is this. And yeah, your storm may be unique or different than other people's storms. But if y'all were all here in the building right now and I asked you to raise your hand, if you have gone through or going through a storm, raise your hand. I bet almost every one of us would raise our hand to that, wouldn't we? Because we've all gone through things that were hard, challenges, tough things. And trust me, if you're not going through them, you will experience them one day. And it's one of those things as all of us in our humanity will face trials, storms, hard things that we don't know how to go through. But the great thing is that we can unite together and we don't have to go through them alone. And I got to see the best picture of that this week before the storm hit. We got to host a funeral here at the church for a family right down the road here in our community. And as I got to meet with this family and talk with them about their journey of what they've been through, they've gone through a huge life storm. But they just continue to talk about over and over again the people that were there to support them along the way. They had people bringing them meals, people that supported them financially, people that brought their kids different things and they were there for them. And then they just talked about how friends and family just kept gathering and helping. And it was so cool to even see the church step up to be able to help this family in their time of need. And for me, it just showed me a picture of what it's like when we work together, when we realize that we're not in this life alone. Yeah, all of us are going to go through tough storms, but to realize that God is there with us in the midst of those, and that also we can be there for each other in the midst of those as well. And so today, as we continue to worry about and go through the storms that we're in right now, in the forecast, but we also go through our storms in our lives, I hope that you remember just to be real about how you feel as you go through these. To take time to focus on God and don't push God away, but draw near to God in the midst of all that you're going through. And then lastly, to realize that you're never alone, to reach out. If you have a prayer request, please submit that. We would love to be praying for you and helping you any way that we can. And we know that there's so many people that would like to rally around you as well in any way, shape, or form. And so today, I hope that you remember that no matter what storms that you go through, that God is going to be there to help you along the way. And one of the songs that we're going to close with today is actually a song from the funeral that we got to experience this week. It's a powerful song about the idea that God is a part of every piece of our story, every storm that we go through, the highs and the lows of life. And so I want you for a moment, as you think about your storm that you're going through, just remember in the midst of it that God is in your storm and God is in your story.